No.
It's true.
We're actually
It's
on
true.
time every day.
I only had 2 turns.
Keely, I can't believe you were late.
Okay, listen up.
Where's my notes?
Go ahead and write calculator right there. And then there's a name for number 1. There's a name for number 2. And then there's a nickname for number 3.
I found them. Yes. I only know the first one.
That's not good.
It's because I wasn't here yet on Friday. When we did it.
Could have been. Could have been.
2 by 3.
I suppose there could be more than one for some of these. Cute. Sai, how about number 1? You got a name for that?
Identity.
Very good. We could call it the identity matrix. If you remember from last year, it's the identity because if you multiply by that matrix, you end up with exactly the same matrix that you started with. It's a matrix equivalent of a 1. You could also call it a square matrix. That would be a little bit general. And then what type of matrix is number 2? Wait, Caleb's the only one that knows for sure?
Yeah, it's an augmented.
It is an augmented matrix, okay? Lizzie, how can you tell that it's augmented?
Well, I was going to say it's 2 by 3.
You said 2 by 3. 2 by 3 would work, okay? But there's a key in here that tells us that it's augmented.
But I can't get a comment.
Let's see. Devakar.
Yeah, it's the line that's right between the.
And what does the line represent?
It's like the equal sign.
It's like the equal sign. So this is the X column, this is the Y column, and this is the answer column where the constants show up right there. And then does anybody remember Carl Friedrich Gauss, the most gifted mathematician? What was his nickname? The Gaussinator. His friends in elementary school called him the Gaussinator, but then after that, they got more sophisticated. What is it?
He's the Prince of Mathematics.
Very good, okay? The Prince of Mathematics, okay? Or if you're in England, say the Prince of Maths, okay? All right, so here's the deal is you...
The CFG. Like DNJ, CFG.
Here's the deal as you saw over the last couple of days, over the last few assignments. It is really hard to do a 2 by 2 or a 3 by 3, especially a 3 by 3 by hand because there's so much arithmetic. Okay? If you make one tiny mistake, you're going to get the wrong answer. So what we're going to use is we're going to use a calculator to help us. So if you would circle the word help. The calculator is not going to do it for us. It's going to help us do it. So the terminology that we use for this is we can call this row reduction. Okay? We can call this Gaussian elimination. Okay? We could call it row operations. But when we do this type of thing, and we use a calculator, yesterday you had to do all the work. You had to figure out what the step was to make that a 1, use the 1 to make the zeros in each one of the columns. Today, all you have to do is figure out what I need to do, and then you're going to tell the calculator to do it for you. You're just going to keep track of the steps. Okay? So, the most important thing here is doing row operations on a calculator is not just about getting the answer. It's about the thinking that gets us to the answer. So I'm hoping that you've noticed as you're applying the ideas and the concepts that we've talked about, your brain starts to work in a bit of a different way. Okay? So we're going to do these on a 2 by 2 first. This should look familiar. You've seen stuff like this before. If you happen to go to, there's a little web address at the bottom of the page. If you need more details for what we're going to talk about today, you can click on that link or go to that website. It's actually the stuff from last year. It will go through and show you an example in detail, all the buttons that we use and all that sort of stuff. But I'm hoping this comes back pretty quickly. So I'm going to come back over here and just remind you. We're going to use the matrix menu and we're going to be looking at the names and we're going to be doing some math and we're going to be doing some editing. And the row operations that we're going to use are the row swap, the times a row, and then times a row and add. There's a couple of others on there. These are the main ones that we're going to do. But if we did row swap and then A, comma 1, comma 2, that's going to grab the matrix A, which we're going to edit in just a second, and it's going to swap row 1 and row 2. We have to put the constant that we're going to multiply in first. So this is the syntax that we're talking about. Then the name of the matrix that we're using, and then the row that we want to multiply by. Okay, so row 1 is going to change in this one. And if we do times a row and add, we have to say, what are you going to multiply by first? We're going to say, which matrix are you going to use? And then which row gets multiplied and which row gets changed. So row 2 gets changed in this one. It's whatever row comes last, that's the one that's going to change, just like the syntax, the shorthand that we're writing down. Okay? Now, remember, you have not made a mistake unless you store the mistake. We'll talk about storing in just a second. And if you ever get stuck, you can always just clear the screen off, quick, go back to the home screen, clear it off, display the matrix, and figure out where you are and what the next step is. Okay? So, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Raise your hand if this vaguely rings a bell from last year. Okay. All right, so I'm going to blow this up just a little bit. And we're going to use those menus, and we're going to put this in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the augmented matrix. Okay? Because remember, we're just using the calculator to help us. Does anybody notice how we ought to write this down? What would be a smart, quick way to save ourselves a step? Andy?
Swap row 1 and row 2.
Very good. Let's just swap row 1 and row 2 right now and write down the augmented matrix as 1, -4, -2, and then -2, 1, and -3. Put the line there. I'm betting most of you yesterday maybe made a mistake somewhere, and I'm sure there were a couple people in here that wrote the matrix down wrong. So double check and make sure, do we have it written down the right way? Looks good to me. Grab your calculator, and then we're going to hit the matrix menu. Okay? So matrix is above the inverse key. It's right here, so, and it's blue. So I've got to hit second and then this button right here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put the matrix in. So we have to edit. So I'm going to come over here. By default, it's going to be a 1 by 1. We want to put in, okay, like Lizzie was saying earlier, it's rows then columns, so we're going to put in a 2 by 3. So we're going to do 2, hit enter, 3, hit enter, and it automatically changes it so you can see the entries right there. Okay. Everybody got that? Okay, now you're at a bit of an advantage because you've got 2 thumbs. I've only got 1 stylus, and it's hard for me to hit the right button on a screen that doesn't feel like a calculator. So would you carefully put it in? Do not quit. Don't go back to the home screen yet. I'm going to put in 1, hit enter, -4, hit enter, -2, hit enter, next row, -2, 1, and -3. Everybody got that? Okay, just like it was frustrating if you started with the wrong thing and made a mistake, if you enter it wrong, this is your last and best chance to change it because you're in the edit screen. So I put them in rows. That's by default what happens. I like checking in columns. So I'm going to check and make sure the last column is -2, -3, -4, 1, and then 1, -2. I think I'm good to go. I'm going to hit second and quit. I'm going to go back to the home screen. And then the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my last double check. I'm going to hit second and matrix. The name of A is the very first thing on here. So I'm going to grab the name of A and paste it to the home screen. And I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to display the matrix. Here's all you have to do. Write down the shorthand. Put it in the calculator, have it do the math for you, and you do not have to write down another matrix until you're done and it's in reduced row echelon form. Okay? So you've got ones down the diagonal, 0 everywhere else, and you can read off the answer. Everybody good with that? So we have step number 1 done, so we're going to stare at this for just a second, and we're going to say, I need to turn that -2 into a 0. So Jack, what do I add to -2 to make it a 0?
2.
2. So we're going to write down 2 times row 1, because that's where the 1 is, and we're going to add it to row 2. We did the thinking, the calculator is going to do the arithmetic. So we're going to hit second and matrix. We're going to do some math. The row operations are at the very bottom of the list, so the easiest way to get there is just hit the up arrow. And the row operation we use most often is at the very bottom of the list. So in just a couple clicks, we're already at times row adds. So we're going to hit enter. And the great thing is it goes back to the home screen and you're staring at the matrix that you want to do, and we're going to put in this syntax. So the first thing is, what are we going to multiply by? So 2. Commas are above the 7. Then we have to tell it which matrix to use. So we're going to hit the matrix menu, grab the name of the matrix A, hit the comma, and then we just tell it, hey, I want you to take row 1, multiply that by the 2 that was at the beginning, and I want you to add it to row 2. If you want to close the parentheses, you can close the parentheses. But you're going to hit enter, and you're going to make sure that it did what you wanted. Our goal was to use the 1 to make the 0. It worked. Can somebody remind us what we need to do now? Lizzie.
Store it.
We got to store it. We haven't done any work and you haven't made any mistakes unless you store it. So the store key is right above the on key. It's going to take the answer, and it knows the answer is a matrix. So we're going to grab the name of the matrix that we want to store it in. We basically want to overwrite. We want to store it in A. We want to replace A with the new A. So we hit enter, and there it goes. And notice that it displays it every single time, so we're all set. Question?
You do second plus, and then, right? That's how you store it?
Second and then store right here.
Oh.
Okay.
I thought you don't for a second. I thought it's just.
Oh, sorry, store, yeah. Yeah, sorry about that. Store, then second, then the matrix menu. Everybody good? Okay, Colson, I want to turn that into a 1. How are we going to turn that into a 1? Very good. We're going to do the reciprocal. That's the most common way to do that, and we don't care if it makes fractions in the other ones. So we're going to do the reciprocal of -7, and we're going to times that by row 2. So I'm going to grab the calculator, and we're going to do some matrix math. All we're going to do is times a row. We're not going to add it to another one, so that's row E. We hit enter. That'll bring it back to the home screen, and you can see the last command that we did at the top, and you can see the new row operation at the bottom. We're going to do -1/7. So -1 divided by 7. I suppose you could put it in as a fraction if you wanted to, but it doesn't make any difference. Okay. The name of the matrix we want it to do that with, so the matrix A. It's kind of a pain to go back and grab that every time, but that's what we have to do. And then we're just going to change row 2. If we've got it in there right, we hit enter. It did what we want, but we haven't done any good work and we haven't made any horrible mistakes unless we save it. So I'm going to hit store, matrix A. Now, does anybody know a quick way where we could just go back and say, hey, I did that command before. Why don't I just go grab that command? Yeah.
Second enter twice.
Okay, so if you hit second enter, there are other ways to do it, but watch. If I just hit second enter, it will recall the last command. So I can hit enter. We're all set to go. It stores that. So if you don't want to retype a command from scratch, which is a hassle, especially because you have to hit so many buttons to put all that syntax in there, you can, with 2 thumbs, be back 20 steps. It's called deep recall. It'll recall about the last 20 things that were in there. Okay? So we're right here. Luke, I want to turn that -4 into a 0. What do I add to -4 to turn it into a 0? 4. So we're going to do 4 times row 2, and we're going to add it to row 1. Now, take a look at these guys. Take a look at how similar they are. So, if you want, you can build it from scratch, or I'm going to hit second enter until I go back and I find that times row add command. It's right there. And then I can just edit it. So what I want to multiply by is 4, so I'm going to change that to a 4. Sometimes if you need extra space, you might have to use a second and insert. We're going to multiply row 2. We're going to add it to row 1. And that quickly, I've got the row operation in there. I didn't have to create it from scratch. I hit enter. It did what we want. So we have this in reduced row echelon form, so I'm going to come back here. Might not be a bad idea to store it, but we're going to do 1, 0, 2, 0, 1, 1. Store that, and then we just write it as an ordered pair. So the answer on this one is 2, 1. Circle it, and we're finished. Okay, any questions? Okay, raise your hand if that comes back pretty quickly. You remember doing this? Okay, flip the page over. Okay, there's our goal. Reduced row echelon form. So it's the identity matrix over here with a bar and then the answers over here. A, B, and C, that's going to be the X, Y, and Z. Now, are we going to do any row swaps to start this off? Nope. Okay. So we're going to write down the matrix that we're going to put in here. So this is going to be 4, 2, 2, 3. Very carefully put that in there. And I'm going to go to the matrix menu. I'm going to edit it. I now have a 3 by 4. I'm going to double check and make sure I've got everything written down the right way before I type it in. I think I'm in good shape. Then I'm going to carefully type it in. Okay, raise your hand if you've got that entered. Okay, give you another couple seconds. Okay, I'm still in the edit mode, so I'm going to double check and make sure that I've got them in there. With a 3 by 4, there's not enough room to see the entire thing at once. So again, it's a really good idea to check the columns now. 3, 4, 13, 2, 1, negative 3. So we've got a mistake right there, so this just needs to be a 3. Got a 2, a 1, and a negative 1, and then a 4, a 3, and a 2. I think I've got it in there right. So I'll just store that. I'm going to clear off the home screen, display the name of the matrix, hit enter. Last chance to double check and make sure we got it right. So I got a 4, 2, 2, 3. Okay, I think I'm good. You guys good? Okay, raise your hand if you've already started. All right, okay. Somebody tell me what would be a great way to do this one and turn it into a 1, that's our first goal, without making any fractions. Okay, if you started already, did you multiply by 1/4?
Yeah.
Okay, that would turn both of those into a fraction. So you can do that, that'll totally work. Last year, that's what you did. Every single time, if you wanted to make a 1, you multiplied by the reciprocal of whatever that number was there. How could I make a 1 in that first spot without making any fractions? Think outside the box a little. Keely, what do you think?
Could you do row 3 times 2 and then do row swap?
I could do, say that again.
Could you do row 3 times 2 and do a row swap?
Times that by 2, that would make a 4. Okay, and then switching, that wouldn't help.
Never mind.
Anybody got another idea? Zach? No? Dane?
Negative R2 plus R1.
Negative 1 times R2 and add it to row 1. If we just subtracted 3 from this, that would turn it into a 1, wouldn't it? Okay, now, you're welcome to do it however you want, but it does actually help if we kind of get rid of fractions or eliminate fractions or avoid fractions if we can. Hang on one second. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go back and I'm going to recall that times row add command. All I want to do is turn that into a negative 3. I want to use that as if it's a negative 3. So I'm going to do a negative and I have to insert a 1 right there. I'm going to do that to row 2 and I'm going to add it to row 1. So the shorthand for what I'm doing is negative 1 times R2 and we're going to add to row 1. Okay, Sai, you had a question?
Do we get the same answer?
You do. Yep. Yeah, it's the same system. It'll give you the same answer regardless of how you do it, as long as you do it right. Okay, hit enter. Did it do what we want? It did, and we didn't have to work with fractions at all. So I'm going to store it. So I'm going to hit second enter a couple of times. store that. Now I'm on to the next one. So I've got this on the screen. Caleb, I need to turn that 3 into a 0. What do I add to 3 to make it a 0?
Oh, a negative 0.
So we're going to do negative 3 times row 1, and we're going to add to row 2. So I'm going to recall that times row command. It was only back there. I have to second enter twice. So we're going to do, whoops, I didn't get the 3 in there. Negative 3 times row 1. Add to row 2. Did what we want. We're in great shape. Don't forget to store it. Okay, Megan, I need to turn that 2 into a 0. Okay, so negative 2 times row 1, add to row 3. Again, we're the boss. We get to tell the calculator what to do. We figure it out, and then we just have it do the math for us. So notice that I can come back here, and I can change this as I go through the backwards direction really quickly. Negative 2 times row 1, add to row 3. Does what we want. I'm going to store that. Okay. Is it always worth it to avoid fractions? Probably not. If I take this one and I multiply it by the reciprocal, that's going to turn that into a whole number. That's going to turn that one into a fraction, but we can deal with that. There are some clever ways where you could use the two of these. Everybody take a look. There are some clever ways where you could use a combination of row 2 and row 3 to turn one of these into a 1 and then just make sure we swap it into the right column or the right row. Okay. If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this one into a 1. Luke, question?
We can just do like negative R3 instead of 2.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to turn this, I'm going to use our normal techniques. We're going to just do the reciprocal of this one, so that's going to be negative 1/2 times row 2. So the times row is way back there. I haven't used it in a while. So I'm going to go to the math menu, hit the up arrow, grab the times row, negative 1 divided by 2, matrix A. Just need to change row 2. Looks good. Notice that it does it in decimals, but we don't really care. By the way, if you put it in as a fraction, it would actually change that to a fraction. If you've got a newer operating system, it makes it look nice. Okay. Lydia, I need to turn that into a 0. What do I add to it? Okay, so I'm going to do 3 times row what?
Row 2.
And add to row?
3.
Wilson, I need to turn that into a 0. How do we do it?
Negative row 2 plus row 1.
Negative row 2 and add to row 1. And once I've got these here, I could do those 2 steps at the same time. So I'm going to go back and grab the times row add command. It's back there a ways. And you kind of have to make a decision what's best here. That's a 2. That's a 3. Make sure I've got it in there right. Looks good. Turned that into a 0, so we're in good shape. I'm going to store it. Then I'm going to type this one in, so I'm just going to recall that times row add command. Change that to a 1. This needs to be a negative, and I've got to insert a 1 there. Looks good. Did what I wanted. It's got a bunch of things in terms of fractions, but we can deal with that. Got to store that work. I've got 6 out of 9 goals taken care of. I'm on goal number 7. So Andy, I need to turn that into a 4, or sorry, turn the 4 into a 1. What do I do?
You could use row 2 and turn it into a 3, or you could just take a fraction.
Okay, so we're probably going to deal with this because here's the issue. Everybody watch. If you tried to use this one to turn that into a 0, it's also going to change that 0. And that's why it's best to get the 1s and then use the 1s to make the 0s. So we're going to turn that into a 1. We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So this is going to be 1/4 times row 3. And again, it's back there far enough. I'm probably just going to make this from scratch. So we're going to do 1/4. Again, if you want to do the fraction menu, you're welcome to do that. Did what we want. Okay, and then I've got one more to take care of. So Abby, how am I going to turn that one into a 0? Yep. -1 times row 3 and add to row 2. And looks like step number 9 is already done for us. So I'm going to grab the times row add command. It's back there a little ways. And we've already got the negative. And we just need to change that to a 2 and that to a 3. And hit enter. Looks like we're in good shape. We're going to hit store so I don't lose any work that I did. Okay. Do we want to write it down as decimals?
Yes.
We do. Okay. I would rather not. I think it's easier to write it as fractions. Luke.
So you hit alpha, F1.
You can do that. You can do alpha y equals.
And then you go to the bottom and you just hit that.
That'll work. Does anybody know a quick array? Dane.
Math.
Yeah.
And
Just hit the math button. Very first thing is arrow to a fraction, so it'll change the answer to a fraction. So I'm going to clear this off. I'm going to display the name of the matrix. It's in decimal form, but if I just hit math and then hit enter, and enter again, it'll quickly change that. So remember, there are some nice little operations under the math. Very first one is changed to a fraction. Okay, any questions? Okay, are we done? Not quite. Not
write
quite.
it down.
Yeah.
Write it.
Okay. Ordered. Okay, you got to show all this. You got to show all the shorthand, and then you're going to write 1 0 0 0 1 1. Oops, 0 0 0 1, and then you're going to write 5 halves, -37 eighths, and then you're going to write 9 eighths. Whoops, 9 eighths, and then you're going to write it as an ordered triple. So this is going to be 5. Whoops, yeah, 5 halves, 37 eighths, 9 eighths. And there's your answer. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
How'd you get that points if you did decimals?
Is your name Cy?